I would happily take him on the Commanders. He can still play. He's just not. He's a 3. He's not a 2 anymore. He's not a 1 or a 2 anymore. He's a 3, but he still has some tank left in the gas.
Gas left in the tank.
Or that.
Put a lot of tank in my gas.
Yeah, English is my second language. In fairness.
Horrible.
In fairness to me.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher. Many gas tanks over here. Lawrence Jackson.
A lot of tank left in the gas.
I believe that's what they do in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of tank left in the gas.
Sure. How's it going, Matthew?
You know what? It's going pretty good. Although last night was interesting. What?
Why is that?
Well, my wife and I, we went out to dinner with my oldest son, which was great. We had a lot of fun, and then we were like, "Oh, let's watch a movie." So we came home. We decided to watch a movie, and I don't know how this came up, but I think I was listening to, on the drive home, listening to like 80s radio or whatever, and a Motley Crue song came on, and somehow we started talking about The Dirt, and I've never seen The Dirt. But I've heard it's great, right? You know, Netflix movie all about basically the rise of Motley Crue based on their book. And so my wife is like, "Oh, I want to watch that." And my adult son is just like, maybe something else. And, like my wife's like, no, let's watch this. It sounds really interesting, because we started talking about it because my adult son has seen it. And so it's a great movie, but, like my son probably didn't want to watch it with his mom, is my point.
Think about the subject here.
It is literally sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
It is literally the definition of it for 2 hours. And it's really fun. I'd never seen it. Highly recommended.
Not a family flick?
Once you get through all the stuff on Peacock, you can go over and check that out. But anyway, it was just funny watching my adult son watch this movie. Next to his mom.
He tried to pivot.
He did try to pivot. Poor kid.
That's my bad. I shouldn't have asked you how you were going. That was going on.
These are things you learn when hosting the show.
Yeah,
You know what?
Just jump right into the rundown as fast as you can. If you get there, amazing.
no,
You
I'll
probably
I'll be
won't.
honest with you. When I'm asked a question, that's the first thing that's on my mind.
I didn't know that was coming. Right, we're going to hit the biggest free agents left in the NFL later in the show. But first, we're going to get caught up with who signed, starting with a former Viking, Matthew.
Yes.
That got paid. And KOC, my best friend, the coach of the year, Kevin O'Connell, he knew a big bag was coming when we spoke to him in New Orleans.
So appreciative of Sam, but we find ourselves in a position where I believe he's the marquee quarterback if he were to make it to free agency, and he's earned the right, signed a 1-year contract with us, and it went as well as it did. So now there's probably a lot of teams that would love to have that kind of production from Sam Darnold in their offenses next year.
Controversial signing somehow for a guy that went 14-3 last year. Obviously didn't end great for Sam Darnold, but statistically he was a monster. He put wins on the board, Lawrence. He gets a 3-year, $100.5 million contract. What are your overall thoughts, feelings about this?
Would you like to know why it's controversial?
Why?
Because he's not that much of an upgrade over Geno Smith.
Yeah, I know, but he's like
Is he one? Like
which I was
definitively?
going to say. Yeah,
7 years younger.
That's probably the main argument for it, but he had the season similar that Geno Smith had a couple years ago when he kind of, got his new contract. What's interesting here too, Jay, is that you're going from a Minnesota Vikings offense and their offensive line to what they got going on over there in Seattle. They gave up the second most quarterback pressures last season, so congrats Seattle did, yes. Congrats to Darnold on getting that contract. He's more than earned that. But now you're going into a situation where, yes, you get that. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba, but then you're looking at MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You're looking at Jake Bobo, and you're going from Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to that.
T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah, and T.J. Hawkinson, and I think they still got Noah Fant over there. So it's gonna be a little different. So you'll get to see if he really that guy now.
Now, on paper right now, this is a huge downgrade for Sam Darnold. What's going to kind of decide where he lands in rankings is that they have 5 picks in the top 100, and 4 of those need to be on offense. I think they need at least 2 interior offensive linemen. They need another receiver very early. And even if they hit on those picks, Lawrence, you're still bringing up the point that this Vikings offense schematically and from a personnel standpoint was so talented. So great for Darnold, but this is a much, much tougher road.
Sam Darnold is an easy guy to root for, right? And so it's a great redemption story. I'm glad he has a starting gig. A week ago, it was looking like he might, the way the musical chairs were playing out, there was a chance that he might be, sitting on the sideline. So happy he's got a starting gig. Happy he got the bag, as the kids say. The kids still say that, right, Jay?
No, I think they're out on that.
But to your point, Lawrence, not only worse offensive line, a lot worse weapons around him than he played in Minnesota, right? But he also played indoors, right? So now he's got to go to Seattle and play outdoors under Clint Kubiak, who last year with Derek Carr, and I don't know that we think that Sam Darnold is miles better than Derek Carr, but Derek Carr was barely a top 20 quarterback on a points per game basis last year when he was healthy. And I get it. You're like, oh, well, Chris Olave was in and out of the offense, and Rashid Shaheed gets hurt. But, like, other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, who else do they have? You just mentioned it. Like, even if they draft, there's no wide receiver that we feel like in the draft where you're like, that's Malik Neighbors, that's Roma, somebody, not Roma Dunze, but like that's even McConkey. That's somebody that you feel like is going to make an immediate impact at the next level, the way that some of the guys last year did.
Right.
And so I don't know. Last year, in Seattle, and I get it's a different offensive coordinator, but Geno Smith was QB 16, and I think that's probably right. That Sam Darnold doesn't run. He's somebody that needed massive touchdown passing equity to earn top 10 status last year, and I just don't think they're going to do it. I suspect the way Clint Kubiak is going to play this offense, especially given what he has to work with and a suspect offensive line, to your point, they're going to try to run the ball and play good defense and try to grind out wins. The only positive to me, Jay, about Sam Darnold signing in Seattle is that Darnold last year proved he could elevate wide receivers, that he could get elite fantasy production out of a wide receiver, because we saw it from Jefferson and Addison. So I think for people that have JSN in Dynasty or people thinking about drafting JSN, I think this is going to be a massive win. We'll talk about him more when we get to DK Metcalf, but just real quickly, there's been 3 career games for Jackson Smith and Jigba without DK Metcalf. He has a 32% target share in those games.
It's gonna be a lot of those games for him.
Darnold is somebody that can get the ball professionally to JSN.
I would say, though, that this comes down to, as well, on the Raiders side, too. So basically 2 doors that you can walk through. Door 1 is giving Sam Darnold, who's going to be 28 years old going into next season, giving him $55 million guaranteed and getting a 3rd-round pick. Door 2 is paying Geno Smith more money, likely, than Darnold got as a 35-year-old and not having the 3rd-round pick. And I would rather go through door 1. I prefer just the lack of commitment on one side and retaining flexibility, getting the 3rd-round pick, and then just also having the youth. Geno Smith isn't going to turn into an MVP candidate. Sam Darnold probably isn't either, but at least he's young enough where there still is some ceiling there.
The only counter here, and we should move on to the next topic, I was just going to say, but the only counter here is that Sam Darnold's got 1 year of production. Geno Smith has proven he can be productive multiple years in Seattle, in that division, in that stadium. And so you're banking on a guy that literally, how long has Sam Darnold been in the league? 7 years?
He was 2018.
This is year 8 coming up.
Yep. So he's been playing for real franchises for 2 years, and one of those years was San Francisco. He didn't get on the field.
Right.
Understood, but I'm just saying we have a very small sample size of Sam Darnold over a 7-year career, and you can argue, yes, all the circumstances, I get that, but he's had 1 year of production, and by the way, the last 2 games of the season were brutal. So my point is I understand the move from Seattle's point of view, from your way, but I also understand the controversy of Seahawks fans saying, why don't we tank for Arch? In all seriousness, we traded everyone away. Let's just, literally, let's go with Sam Howell. And
you want my real answer, though?
Yeah.
I don't think Arch is going to be in next year's draft class, and I'm just saying that because every fan base is saying it. And I think he's going to play 2 more years of college.
Yeah.
Just to kind of nip that in the bud on this show, every fan base is like, we'll go for Arch. It's what the Mannings do. NIL, he'll be paid handsomely to play college football and develop. So I'm just telling every fan base now, there's no guarantee Arch Manning is in the 2026
draft. All right, 2-year tank. Let's go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, once upon a time, Sam Darnold was a swing at quarterback for the New York Jets. They made another swing with Justin Fields on a 2-year, $40 million contract. It was perhaps a little bit unsurprising once the word started circulating that perhaps that wasn't going to happen with the Steelers. What do you think about Fields' fit in New York?
Well, I think if you want to value Fields in fantasy, this is what you wanted, because he's going to play, right? That's the thing with Justin Fields. It's not, is he valuable in fantasy? You look at his 6 starts last year. He was a top 12 quarterback in 3 of them. He was QB1 in 1 of them in an offense that didn't want him throwing the ball or doing much of anything. I think we could all agree Garrett Wilson is better than George Pickens. Breece Hall is a better pass-catching back than Najee Harris. So this is better for Justin Fields, who Aaron Glenn wants the quarterback to run the football. Tanner Engstrand from the Lions wants the quarterback to be under center to develop the play-action passing game. So from a fantasy perspective, this puts Fields in a great line. For the Jets, it's a ticket, like it's a lotto ticket, because what were your other options? You're going to play Tyrod until, unfortunately, Tyrod kind of gets hurt every year, sign Marcus Mariota or Carson Wentz. Like, those are the names they were connected to. So for the Jets, it's an upside swing. We'll see if it works. History kind of tells you these things don't always work out that way, but he's fantasy relevant right out of the gate.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Lawrence, do you think that Justin Fields is high variance? Do you think he has a lot of upside left, or do you think we kind of know what Justin Fields is now?
I think we're getting close to knowing what he is, but this is an actual chance where he has he has some structure around him. You get a new coach in there, and Aaron Glenn, he's a good coach. You see what the Bears are doing right now? They never did that when he was there. He played the 6 games in Pittsburgh. We was like, he played better than he's played.
Took care of the ball.
So now he's got that number 1 receiver. He's got those running backs, and you got a hell of a defense over there that could play good when you have an offense that can sustain drives. So, I think this is going to be a big year for him, and this is the year where he says, well, I could be a franchise quarterback or I cannot. I think he comes out on top of that.
Lawrence, this is kind of the stuff that you and I talked about on Worse Lands. It's the number 1 Jets podcast. I don't know if it's been covered on Badlands yet.
No, we haven't heard of it yet.
Okay, but on Worse Lands, Lawrence and I talked about this, and all my friends that are Jets fans, not Connor, but all my real friends that are Jets fans, they're thrilled about this move, and I think they should be, right? Because it's a low risk roll of the dice. They can draft a quarterback this year and develop it, or they can wait till next year as well, because you've got a veteran, Tyrod Taylor, behind Justin Fields. But Justin Fields is somebody who has had success at the NFL level. He has not had consistent success at the NFL level,
right,
but he has had success at the NFL level. This is somebody who was a highly touted prospect out of Ohio State. He was a top 12 overall draft pick, and no one was scratching their heads at the time going like, what were the Bears doing right there? And so now he comes into a system where there's a plan, and the Jets need to add to the offense. They need to add to the offensive line. They need to add another weapon outside of Garrett Wilson. But to your point, fantasy-wise, we're excited because another viable starting quarterback has been added to the player pool. The 6 games in Pittsburgh that you mentioned, he was a top 8 fantasy quarterback. Bingo. He has always put up fantasy points because of his legs, and I think you could make an argument that just with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, he has better weapons than he's ever had at any point in his career. Here's him celebrating
He's
in
having a good old
Dubai,
time.
Lawrence.
Yeah, look at him.
He's got some friends. Who's with him?
Yeah, he should be very happy. He's a starting quarterback again, and that looks like my man Kyle Pitts right there.
Yo.
That is Kyle Pitts. Did Kyle Pitts sign a new contract or something?
No.
He's smiling bigger than Justin Fields.
He's so happy.
He happy as hell. It's like, now I understand celebrating life, but that is the smile of a man who just went for 1,400 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. The only problem is that ain't what Kyle Pitts got. Kyle Pitts keeps celebrating life, man, but damn. Get on that field, dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Get on that field, man. We
Maybe
need
he knows something we don't. Is he going
Maybe
somewhere?
Yeah, maybe.
Is he going to the Jets?
Yeah, is he going with them? I don't think so.
Speaking of tight ends to the Jets.
By the way, didn't a lot has been made that Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson were together at Ohio State for a little time, but wasn't Tyler Conklin as well?
No, but they signed Josh Myers.
Is that who it is? I knew one of there was a tight end connection. Okay.
Jeremy, you're thinking of Jeremy Rucker.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Jeremy Rucker.
Yep. So you had a Jets tight end in mind.
I had somewhere in there. In the back of my mind, I was like, I know there's like a Jets tight end. Whatever.
Fields was probably in like 6th grade when Conklin came to the NFL.
It's the off season. No one expects me to be in the pre-show meetings.
You did say something about them having to add more weapons outside of Garrett Wilson.
40 years old.
Yeah.
And they
Thomas
do.
Morstead also played with Justin Fields at Ohio State. Yeah.
So did Vinny Testaverde. The Jets had a 7th overall pick, and Connor, we talked about this, the options they could go there. You brought up Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
I would like that if they could get Tyler Warren in there, because that helps you in the pass game, and it definitely helps you in the running game, and you can use him so many ways. how about a little trade for Chris Olave or something? Then you get the whole Ohio State band back
There you
together.
Yep.
Yeah, you might have to give up a little something.
Okay. Well,
but, yeah.
I'm being told that Daniel Jones, he played quarterback in college with Dallas
We're not talking
Clark.
about Geno?
Yeah. No, we talked about Geno. I think
Not
we
in
covered
Las
Geno.
Vegas, we didn't talk about Geno,
Is
but
there
whatever.
much to say about Geno?
No, it's fine. Geno's a low-end QB2. The only positive here is Chip Kelly plays at a very fast pace of play, and so maybe they use Geno a little bit.
Brock Bowers will be a beast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay. Colts
All right, there you
agree
go.
to terms with Daniel Jones, $14 million contract. You stepped all over my great 6 out of 10 Dallas Clark gag, but that's fine. Now, I don't.
No, go ahead and repeat it.
No.
on
We
now.
spent
You
the
can't repeat a
moment's
joke.
passed.
Yeah.
I was going to make a Jeremy Shockey gag as well, but that's fine. We can move on to Daniel Jones playing quarterback for the Colts, which I don't find that offensive, but it seems like you do.
I think this
You're
is
very upset.
This is
Yeah,
the dumb.
why are you
This
so
is the.
emotional
This is
about it?
this is to me the dumbest move of the offseason, and I just want to say here right now,
Javon
Colts
Kinlaw
fans drink for free. I feel bad for Colts fans because this is such a moronic move.
Well, they're fighting
This is
amongst each other
this is a-
now.
this
The
is a
Colts fans,
moronic-
they like the new 49ers fans now.
I'm gonna tell you why this is such an unbelievably dumb move, and this goes back to the combine where Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Colts, literally openly said to the shock of a lot of people, where he was asked repeatedly, you mean that there's an open quarterback competition for Anthony Richardson? Anthony Richardson's not guaranteed the starting job of the Colts, and that's what Ballard said. We want to bring in a veteran quarterback, someone that can compete in that quarterback room and open competition for quarterback, and that is what they have done. Here's the problem. They've got no plan. Listen, Daniel Jones is not leading you to the Super Bowl, right? Daniel Jones is leading you to a wild card loss. Like, that's where, like, the best case scenario is that Daniel Jones gets into the wild card and maybe a win that game, maybe a sneak out one win, right? He's won a wild card game in his career. But the chances of Daniel Jones leading you to a Super Bowl, I think, are fairly slim. Like, Daniel Jones, I think, is a perfectly fine professional quarterback, right? The issue is that Anthony Richardson could be really special. He could also be a bust. We just don't know. The Colts drafted Anthony Richardson understanding that he was a project. There's a kid who had played very little in Florida as a starting quarterback, and because of injuries and everything like that, I think, Lawrence, he's played like less than 30 games in his college and pro career combined as a starting quarterback.
That's
so,
crazy.
Right. And so my point is, you used a top 5 overall pick on this kid. And so what you're going to do is you're going to bring in Daniel Jones, and I bet you Daniel Jones actually wins this starting job because at this stage of their careers, Daniel Jones is probably a better pro quarterback. He's more polished. Shane Steichen's offense is actually a nice fit for Daniel Jones. He'll get him on the move, get him outside the pocket, use Daniel Jones' legs. That's not what you want. Like, you guys will joke about me always bringing it back to the Commanders, but I think back to the Commanders. Hang on. And when I think about this, and I got back to think about the Commanders and the Sam Howell year, and I was just like, I want Sam Howell to play every single game because one of two things happens. He's either our quarterback of the future, or we realize he's not the guy, and we lose a bunch of games, and we have a low draft pick. And that's actually what happened, and then we got Jaden Daniels. The problem is that what I remember saying that year is I do not want Jacoby Brissett to start because Jacoby Brissett is actually a solid professional quarterback that'll get you 7, 8, 9 wins. And then you're in quarterback hell because you're not going to be high enough to pick a good guy. And that's what Daniel Jones does. Daniel Jones is going to get you 8, 9 wins. And then the Colts are still in like quarterback hell because it's like, what are you doing? You're in a division with Trevor Lawrence. You're in a division with C.J. Stroud. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to. It's unbelievable to me, right? Anthony Richardson should start every single game this year that he's healthy, and then you should get somebody to back him up. But like, you should basically say, like, Anthony Richardson, this is your year, and let's see. And they'll either at the end they'll be like, oh, we have something here. The reason we used the number 4 overall pick on this guy, or you know what, it's not working out, and we got to restart. But Daniel Jones just And the reason Daniel Jones went, because Minnesota wanted him back as well. The reason Daniel Jones went to Indy is because I'm sure they told him, you have a legit shot at starting here. We're going to give you an opportunity legitimately to compete and be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Daniel Jones isn't stupid. And so I'm sure they told him that, and I'm sure they meant that, that's why Daniel Jones went as opposed to competing for a Super Bowl with the Vikings. Sorry. This move drove me crazy, Lawrence.
I'm with you on. I think it's a ridiculous sign, and just based on the fact that Daniel Jones has been a starting quarterback, so because of that, it'll create some controversy. I don't know if this is what they wanted. It seems like they did, but now they've gotten it. The thing about So I'm with you until the point where I believe Anthony Richardson is going to start week 1. In fact, I think he would have to be completely just out of whack in training camp to not be starting week 1. Now, what happens after he starts week 1, that's a whole nother story. Now, and we've seen that happen last year with the Joe Flacco and stuff like that. But I just don't imagine, I don't imagine players and staff seeing Daniel Jones in practice and seeing Anthony Richardson both practicing and being like, yeah, we got to go with Daniel Jones. And look,
I bet you but he's a better, Connor, you tell me if you agree with this or not. I'd argue Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Anthony Richardson right now. I didn't mean to
like a practice.
You could say that. He also played 6 years in the league.
Yeah, of course.
Now, but also
he doesn't
too,
have the upside of Richardson.
I'll take out Daniel Jones' last 2 seasons. I'll be fair to him, where he was 3-13 as a starter, threw 10 picks and 10 touchdowns, 13 picks. Let's go to his breakout season when he threw 15 touchdowns. I just don't know how much better that is and if it's worth it to even trot him out there. Like that season, he had 3 games over 40 passing attempts. He averaged 224 passing yards. That's not a lot of passing yards for 40 passing attempts. So it's yeah, he's better, you could say, but he's played a lot more football. We have to see Anthony Richardson playing football. So on that front, I'm with you. This should be the year Anthony. His competition to me is not Daniel Jones. His competition is staying healthy. That's what Ballard said that too. He got to play games. You have to stay on the field.
Yeah, my thing here, Connor, and the reason I'm not so offended by it is that I don't think that you can go into the season without insurance.
That's exactly
Anthony Richardson. Because I think the way it's going to go is that I think Anthony Richardson will start, but if Richardson gets hurt or if he's terrible for 2 months, then you need to pivot.
The offense is similar, I would think, with Jones's mobility. And I don't think you're wrong, Matthew and Lawrence. I get I think you're just looking at a different lens. Chris Ballard's contract is through 2026. That is scalding for a GM. Most GMs have 3-4 years left on their deals. This is a guy that has been a GM in the NFL, I believe, for 8 years now. 62-69 is their record of him as GM. You're looking at a Super Bowl lens, as analysts and fans should, because that's the goal of the sport.
Right. Yeah.
Executives don't. They look at it as job security and winning. He gave out 2 monster deals to defensive backs in free agency. He never spends money in external free agency. He is operating in a totally different way right now where he needs a floor at quarterback. With Anthony Richardson, who I liked a lot better as a prospect than Daniel Jones, there is no floor. Yep. There's also no ceiling. Yep. The range of outcomes is insane. With Daniel Jones, I know it's been not pretty at times, and that's a large part of that is because of the Giants as well. Yep. There is some kind of floor. So that's the thought process of why they did this. You don't have to love it, but that's why they did this.
There should be someone else there. And look,
that's
his agent is saying, we with that, we cool, we ready to go. That's what you should be saying. He's working with Josh Allen this summer, whatever. He ain't on social media. That's what I want to see.
Right.
Yep. I agree.
I think I agree with everything you said. I just think there's probably a lower tier Marcus Mariota. There's and I'm happy he's back with the Commanders, but there's a lower tier guy that's a mobile quarterback that's a similar offensive skill set, that would fit in, but also isn't going to quote challenge for the job.
Right. Because
it
tells you what they wanted.
But also Daniel Jones could have stayed in Minnesota where J.J. McCarthy is hurt and unproven. And potentially, so the fact
I thought he should have. I actually think this is not the right move for Jones.
I thought he would have had I thought he had a better chance to start there, but he knows more than us. So.
Yep. All right, you mentioned Marcus Mariota. He is one of the other quarterbacks to sign. These guys are very likely going to be backups. The most interesting one to me, Matthew, is Mac Jones signing with San Francisco, which is perhaps 4 years overdue with all the rumors that Kyle Shanahan wanted him in the draft. He finally gets paired with Shanahan, and just with Brock Purdy's injury history. Brock Purdy hasn't had major injuries that have caused him to miss a ton of games, but he quietly is constantly banged up, so he may see the field at some point.
And there's at some point there's going to be a contract issue with Brock Purdy. I'm hearing that Purdy wants top of market. Given his success, that makes sense. But also, the 49ers, do they want to pay top of market for Brock Purdy? Who, to your point, has had trouble staying healthy, and how much of it is Brock Purdy and how much of it is just Kyle's system and all the weapons they put around him.
Yep. All right, let's move
So,
on to
interesting.
wide receivers staying in the NFC West. Connor, Davante Adams to the Rams, 2 years, $46 million. You kind of called this. You
Yeah, but
called him
Lawrence
to-
actually called it. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. I said Davante wanted to go back to the West Coast. I said the Chargers. Lawrence said the Rams. Points go to Lawrence on that one. But, man, we love
If you would have said the Rams, I'd have said Chargers.
We knew where he wanted to go from a geographical standpoint.
I think I said the Giants because I thought that's where Rodgers was
package
going.
deal?
The package
And then
deal.
we
So I
forgot
was way
Rodgers
off.
doesn't make up his mind the first week of free
that's a
agency.
good point.
Davante did. He gets paid really well. I think this is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp in the Rams offense. I love this move. Davante could still play. That release package is still filthy. He knows how to get open. And now you have him and Puka Nacua that can play different roles. Both can play inside and outside. But Lawrence, I think Davante is going to have a really nice year in McVay's offense.
He had a decent year last year, and that was with your Jets, Connor. Over 1,000 receiving yards, and he missed 3 games after being traded from the Raiders. So, and again, with the Raiders, he was good. Showed he's still explosive. You said it. His release package off the line, that's been his bread and butter since he's been in the league. So I love it for Stafford.
It's an upgraded quarterback.
7 straight years with a target share of 29.5% or more. He can still earn targets at a very high rate. And it's just worth noting that in 3 of Matthew Stafford's 4 years as the quarterback of the Rams, they have had 2 different wide receivers in the top 24 of fantasy points per game. This is an offense, Stafford, coached by McVay, that can support 2 very fantasy-relevant wide receivers. I have Puka over Adams in my initial ranks, but both guys should be, top 15 plays this year.
Yep. Well, another team that's going to have to find a way to support 2 top wide receivers. The Steelers acquired DK Metcalf from the Seahawks in exchange for a 2025 second-round pick. Lawrence is going to be Go Ball City in Pittsburgh, but it's hard, I guess, to really nail down what DK's value is until we know what the quarterback situation
Yeah,
is.
who's throwing the go ball? So
Yeah.
we need to figure that out. But look, 900 or more receiving yards in all of his 6 NFL seasons. DK Metcalf's the guy who will go past the defense. George Pickens is the guy who will take the ball from the DB. So it's really, I had a poll on my Insta. I like to do these little questions on my Instagram stories, and I said, who would you rather have, knowing what you know, between Davante Adams and DK Metcalf? And it was overwhelmingly in favor of Davante Adams because you know who the quarterback is, you know what Matthew Stafford represents. So
He's also better.
then,
Davante Adams is better than DK Metcalf.
yeah, that too. Yes, I'm definitely not disputing that. So now you're the Steelers. You're either gonna have Russell Wilson or you're gonna have Aaron Rodgers,
Or
And then-
neither.
or
There's
neither.
a scenario where neither shows up.
And you still got Arthur Smith calling the plays, and he's going to call the offense a certain type of way to where, DK might struggle to get another 900 yards, so we'll see.
So this is the Sam Darnold of wide receiver signings. Happy that DK got paid. Same with Sam Darnold. But this is a move that is, like Sam Darnold going from Minnesota to Seattle, this is just a massive downgrade for his fantasy value, right? He's going to a run-first offense on a team that has no quarterback. And, oh, by the way, a play caller that not only wants to be run-heavy, but also, he's competing with a guy that's very similar. Obviously, they're very different body types. They're different wide receivers, but they're basically
I
both
agree.
go wide receivers.
I don't know if George Pickens is on this team after the draft.
I mean,
wouldn't think so.
maybe that's what's going on.
They
but
talked about Mason Rudolph, too, bringing him
good
back.
Lord.
Hi, what's
but
the
50% of DK Metcalf's receiving yards last year, 50% of his receiving yards last year came on passes 20 or more air yards down the field, right? I mean, just like he's a deep guy, right? 2020, that was the last year that DK Metcalf finished higher than wide receiver 22 on a points per game basis. He is a boom or bust guy in Seattle, and now he's going to cold weather city, questionable quarterback play, competition for targets on a run-first guy. Yep. Arthur Smith is a guy that couldn't get the ball to Drake London. You know what I mean? And so now we think he's going to get the ball to DK Metcalf. He's in the 30s for me. He's he's going to be wide receiver somewhere between 30 and 35 for me. Boom bust guy that you're just going to have to start every week, and there'll be some weeks where he goes off and he's awesome, and there's other weeks where he's 3 for 26.
Yep. Well, a higher floor guy when he's healthy, at least, is Chris Godwin. I believe this was another Matty newsbreaker item, calling Chris Godwin back to the Bucs. Connor, he gets 3 years, $66 million. No surprise here, perhaps. There's a lot of money, though, for a guy coming off a serious injury.
And it sounds like he passed up a lot of money from the New England Patriots to stay, which we love. I think we'd rather see Chris Godwin keep things, in check with Baker Mayfield, a place that he's had a ton of success. And obviously the Bucs felt the same way. So I think this is obviously the best outcome. Now, coming back from the injury, I'm going to kind of monitor how much he does in the OTAs in camp and see how ready he is to go out of the gate. But I think you want Godwin in a place where he's familiar and successful.
To me, this is the best case scenario for so many reasons. Obviously, familiarity with the team, with Baker, with the offense, because even though Liam Cohen's gone, it's going to be the same basic offensive system that Canales and Cohen have run the last 2 years. And no team has probably more insight into his health than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the fact that Tampa Bay was like, here's $44 million guaranteed, total contract 66, but it's 44 guaranteed, tells you that they're not concerned about his long-term health, that they know it better than anyone else. Like if New England had been, you're like, well, they're desperate and who knows.
Right, we just got to get him in here.
Maybe they just got to get him here. But the fact that Tampa Bay was willing to commit that kind of money to him after that injury kind of tells you what they think about this guy. Prior to his injury last year, fifth best wide receiver in fantasy football, almost 20 points per game. He was actually leading the NFL in receptions per game. He was third in yards per game. All in on Chris Godwin this year.
I think once you become injured, that kind of hurts your price a little bit, but I think he's going to be like a nice little value in these drafts. Mike Evans will go ahead of him in fantasy drafts, but I think Chris Godwin will be a nice value.
He's the rare receiver I'd actually handcuff with Jalen McMillan. Like if I would draft Jalen McMillan towards the end of my drafts if I took Godwin early, knowing if I lose Godwin again, because guys get hurt all the time and he gets hurt, McMillan will step right into that role and be productive.
Yep. Another potential value guy coming off, veteran guy coming off a year of injuries is Christian Kirk, Matthew, former Jags wide receiver, traded to the Texans in exchange for a 2026 seventh, so not much at all. Do you think there's anything left in the Kirk tank?
I actually do, right? I mean, Houston. On Houston, Stephon Diggs played in the slot a decent amount, and he was wide receiver 16 on a points per game basis. We don't think Tank Dell's going to play this year, and we don't think Stephon Diggs is going to come back to Houston. So I do think Kirk is kind of an interesting kind of flyer here. My guess is he'll be in like the 40 to 45 range for me once I do all my positional ranks. But I think there's some 12-team, 3-wide receiver league upside there for Kirk to have something left in the tank. I will say in my 25 rumors that I heard at the Combine, I put it, I didn't think about the Texans because I said Christian Kirk and Evan Engram were going to be released by the Jaguars, and I was half right. I was right that both guys are no longer on the team, but I forgot that anytime a team says, hey, we're going to release a guy, then the Texans are like, oh, what if we just give you a 7th instead? They did that with Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon
with Joe.
Same
hey,
thing.
Don't give it to us for free. We'd much rather send a 7th. But hey, listen, maybe it's smart because maybe they think they can't recruit there. And, if Kirk's on the free agent market, maybe he gets more.
I think this makes sense because if you just take a step back logically, they move on from Bobby Slowick. What was his alleged crime? Well, that he runs the ball too much. So you expect that they're going to throw the ball more. And Christian Kirk is going to be wide receiver 2, most likely, for C.J. Stroud. And that's
he gets to play the slot because Nico Collins is a perimeter monster.
Yep.
So you know where he's going to play.
And given how bad their offensive line is, he's probably going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. Because, Larry Matunzel is now a commander. Tell the Commanders.
No offensive line. Literally.
It's brutal.
It's wild.
It was a bad one last year, and then they got rid of the
best
only
player
guys
on
that
it.
can play.
Yeah.
Right. Including Tunsil. They got rid of the best guy on the team, and then anyway, it's a weird one.
Lawrence, the Ravens signed DeAndre Hopkins, formerly of the Chiefs naturally, to a 1-year contract. This is a very Ravens-y type of signing, kind of a version of them signing Odell a couple of years ago, going for the big-name guys perhaps on the other side. Do you think that D-Hop can make a significant impact in Baltimore?
I think it's good for regular football purposes because it gives Lamar another guy to go to in the red zone. He's DeAndre Hopkins automatically the guy with the best hands on the team. Saw him catch a pass in the Super Bowl, but fantasy, let's not get crazy here. He's behind Rashad Bateman. Right. He's behind Zay Flowers. He's behind both the tight ends. So when it comes to that, so you got to account for DeAndre Hopkins as a defense when you get in that red area. So if anything, this helps Lamar. I don't know how much more you help a guy who threw for 4,040 touchdowns, but in the red zone, DeAndre Hopkins has some value there.
Yep. I think it went a little bit under the radar, kind of just the steps that Rashad Bateman took towards the end of last season, and that combined with Zay Flowers, who no one brings up, like Zay Flowers didn't play against Buffalo.
It was huge.
In the divisional round. That made a huge difference. But you think that D-Hop is going to be the third option.
Yeah, you get reliable veteran depth, right? You know they want to scheme touches to Zay. You like some of the boom weeks that Bateman brings. He just needs to be healthy. Rashad Bateman can play. That's not the question. So now you get a guy that if one of those two get hurt and maybe they are a little injury prone, he can step into a number 2 role.
It'll be interesting to see if Mark Andrews is still on this team.
I know, that's kind of what that does for
I was going to say behind the 2 tight ends as long as Andrews is still on the team, but whatever. I ain't going to do all that. But, DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, other wide receivers that signed in free agency. Tutu Atwell goes back to the Rams. Diami Brown gets a lot of money to go to the Jags. Hollywood Brown back with Kansas City. Mac Hollins changes teams in the AFC. He's going to the Patriots. Josh Palmer, maybe replacing the Mac Hollins role. He goes to Buffalo.
I'm in on that one.
Yeah.
That one's the most interesting of these guys on this list.
Well, he could be wide receiver 2 for Josh Allen.
Right.
Yes.
And he can win down the field. He's an underrated player. I like Josh Palmer a lot. And they paid him $12 million a year, so they think his role is significant.
Yeah, who knows what's going on with Amari Cooper? They have Keon Coleman there, but they have Khalil Shakir. But you could see a scenario where it's Palmer and Keon Coleman on the outside and Shakir in the middle, and that's basically going to be their starting 3 wide receivers there as well. Darius Slayton goes back to your Giants. They're Connor Rodgers. Exciting for him.
Felt like they've tried to get rid of him like 4 times throughout his career.
He is a lifer.
And then I was like, I'll just stick around.
He's the face of the franchise.
He is. This is his biggest contract.
It's him and Dexter Lawrence.
It used to be Jay's Giants, but now Jay's changed his alliance to the Chargers, which we'll
I'm a Chargers
in a
man.
second.
Oh, okay.
I got a Super Bowl ticket on them, so we'll see who my team is next year. All right. Well, a guy who's not changing teams, that's Aaron Jones of the Vikings, who's going back to Minnesota on a 2-year, $20 million contract. And we heard Kevin O'Connell waxing lyrical about Aaron Jones on Radio Row.
When I found out it would be possible to add a player of Aaron's caliber to our offense, it was how fast I could get to Green Bay to help him pack his stuff and come to Minnesota. But I think the biggest thing for me is what Aaron Jones brought that nobody really saw, and that's inside our building. For a player to come in and have the impact in that locker room that Aaron had, I think he's one of one as a human being in our league. I think he is still very capable of being that lead runner, that lead running back. He impacted our run game, our pass game. He can pass protect. He can do just about everything that we need our running back to do on our offense, and it impacted us greatly this year. So I would love to have Aaron back, but Aaron is one of my all-time favorites, and it didn't take long for him to establish himself within our organization or with me.
After hearing KOC talk to us, we literally said, Aaron Jones ain't going anywhere.
Right.
I tell my daughters, find somebody that looks at you the way Kevin O'Connell looks at Aaron Jones. Could not have been more effusive, and he does return as well. This is a guy who's coming off a year where he had career highs in touches, carries, and rushing yards last season. Top 8 among running backs in receptions and receiving yards. They really used him in the passing game last year as well. I think they'll add to that running back room.
Me too.
I think he's probably going to have next year 65% of the run. They'll have, especially given how deep the running back class is, they'll add to somebody as well. And look, he's on the wrong side of 30, tends to leave games early, gets banged up. But I think this is about the best possible landing spot for Aaron Jones to be back in Minnesota, back in an offense that has used him effectively, that likes him so much, will make him the number 1. I think he's a low-end RB2 next year.
Yeah, I would say, Matthew, we should look at where they choose to add to that running back room. If there's still running backs out there, if they get a veteran running back that they get in 3 days, then we're like, oh, Aaron Jones. But then if they go pick up a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round, that's when we should start talking about possible, touches or 35% share and stuff like that.
Yep. Connor, big news, perhaps the biggest signing of all. Chargers agreed to terms with Najee Harris, who quietly is 5,000 to 1 MVP on DraftKings. He goes for a 1-year contract, very Harbaugh type of signing.
Oh, my God. A big running back, can run between the tackles, can catch dump-off passes. This is a Harbaugh signing to a T. They love these big thumping backs that just go downhill. And it makes Najee valuable, again, because the Chargers will run the football and the Chargers will be an offense that gets in the red zone enough to matter. So For Najee, this is probably the best news you could think of.
J.K. Dobbins, if he didn't get hurt, if he didn't do his MCL against the Ravens, he was going to be like 1,200 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns type of season, and Najee will probably get a bigger workload than Dobbins did, given Dobbins' injury history.
We've had a lot of fun with Najee Harris on this show, and obviously you love him more than your own children. But
like a father.
Yes. But listen, there are positives to Najee Harris. Among them is, like, the guy never gets hurt. Like, he is he's very, very consistent, and he's somebody that you can sort of run, give a lot of work to. And last year, the Chargers top 12 in terms of running back carries, running back rushing touchdowns. They want to run the ball. The challenge here is that they just don't, at least last year, they don't use the running backs in the passing game at all. Herbert doesn't seem to dump off. Like last year, they were. They were 31st in running back target share last year as well. And they also, by the way, they play at a slow pace of play. Like, there's just like less possessions. So this is the best quarterback of Najee Harris's career. And I think he's going to be one of those guys, especially if you go 0 RB. Like, no one's going to be excited to draft Najee Harris, but you're going to look up and he's going to have 1,200 yards and maybe double-digit touchdowns, and he's going to have low-end RB2 production.
Yep, I thought he got meaningfully better last year as well.
Me too. I thought he looked his best. My prediction for Najee Harris would be is that he has his career high in rushing touchdowns next year.
Yep.
He had it 2 years ago with 8. I think he gets to 10 this year.
Yep.
I agree.
Lawrence, couple Cowboys-related running back moves. One, the Cowboys themselves, they signed Javonte Williams, formerly of the Broncos, 1 year, $3 million contract, and then Rico Dowdle goes out to the Panthers. Do either of these moves move them?
As we sit here today, Javonte Williams, he that guy, ain't he? Speaking of teams that you should look towards, we remember we was talking at the Super Bowl, like, we always think Dallas going to draft the running back, and there goes Rico Dowdle. Well, Rico Dowdle ain't there no more. Now he's backing up Chuba Hubbard, who I still like a lot in that Panthers backfield. But for Javonte Williams, I cannot see how they don't spend a high-value pick on a running back in this draft. For Rico Dowdle on his side, it's, man, you run for 1,000 yards. Now you got to go compete for touches. A guy like Chuba Hubbard, who had his own 1,000-yard season. So that backfield gets a little bit more mushy, but obviously you like Hubbard.
I mean, Hubbard got paid, and, they released Miles Sanders. Dowdle feels like more like depth because they're not sure when Jonathan Brooks is going to be back.
It might be a while.
Right.
Yeah.
So I understand the concern, but feels like, Dave Canales is like a
There's
guy.
no concern. Rico Dowdle, $3 million.
Yeah, it's a nothing deal, and it's the same with Javonte Williams. Like, it's a $3 million deal. Javonte Williams is depth. I didn't think Javonte Williams looked that great in Denver, so I think
they constantly wanted to get away from him. Like, they would try Audric Estime, they would try different running backs, and they're like,
McLaughlin, Okay, some other depth running backs who have signed: Samaje Perine to the Bengals, Elijah Mitchell to the Kansas City Chiefs. We have A.J. Dillon to be part of the tush push in Philadelphia. Kenneth Gainwell leaves Philly to the Steelers. Khalil Herbert to the Colts. Ty Johnson stays with the Bills. Any of these of note to you, Matt?
Yeah, obviously Elijah Mitchell, anyone that, he's proven if he can stay healthy, he's on the Chiefs. And I'll also say, who was the very last one? So Samaje Perine going back to the Bengals.
Yeah.
Like that, that familiarity and having only Chase Brown there. They talked, Zach Taylor talked at the Combine about wanting to add somebody, especially that could be good on pass protection. That's Samaje Perine's bread and butter. He is a great pass pro guy. He's good out of the backfield. So Samaje Perine suddenly interesting as a insurance back behind Chase Brown because he's been productive when he's gotten a shot.
Super Bowl on the line. Zach Taylor gave the ball to Samaje Perine famously against the Rams.
Yeah, that was a dumb move.
Okay, last
we
one.
We love Samaje Perine, but not. When you have Joe Mixon, come on.
Yeah, indeed. All right, last one for us, tight ends. Broncos, they agreed to terms with Evan Engram. And there are worlds, Matthew, where Evan Engram might be the number 2 option in this passing game some days.
I mean, you think about how that offense plays out next year, and at least as it sits here today, you've got Sutton and Mims, running deep routes. But I think Evan Engram, for all intents and purposes, is kind of going to be a big slot for Bo Nix. And, we've heard all this talk about how Sean Payton wants a joker right? He keeps talking about he wants the Joker, and Evan Ingram's not exactly Taysom Hill, but Evan Ingram's going to be the closest thing to that role that Sean Payton has wanted.
Evan Ingram's like the Six of Hearts. It's very
exactly. He's not really the Joker, but I'm just saying, listen, he's a good pass-catching tight end. He can run a route, and I think all the underneath stuff is going to go to him, with the other two guys running deep. And Bo Nix is very good in terms of short, accurate passing. So Ingram, who's never a big touchdown guy, but if he can stay healthy, he can be a volume PPR guy, kind of a low-end tight end one.
Okay, this summer is your chance to catch the Premier League right here in the United States. Man U, Bournemouth, Everton and West Ham take the pitch across the country. Head to premierleague.com/summer series for more information and to purchase tickets starting tomorrow. We're going to hit our first break. When we come back, the big names still out there in free agency.
Obviously that one is tough, especially for a guy that's meant so much to me in my career and how he helped me get in with the Rams. I've spent probably more time with him as a teammate than really any other teammate in my career. He's meant a ton to me as a player, but even more probably as a person. He's a fantastic player. He means a ton to our team, but just as a human being, as a person, he's as good as it gets. I love Cooper and would love opportunity to continue to play with him, or if he's somewhere else, whoever gets him, it's going to be, he's a fantastic person for the locker room, for the team, and when he's healthy, he's still balling.
Okay, Cooper Kupp headlines. List of remaining notable free agents. Some huge names on this list, even if they are, all of them really in the twilights of their career. But Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, a couple running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb coming off of injuries. Stephon Diggs also coming off of an injury. Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Matthew's best friend, Mr. Tyler Lockett. Let's start off with Cooper Kupp. The Seattle Times reporting the Seahawks are right at the front for free agent Cooper Kupp, and I think, Matthew, that would be a pretty ideal landing spot, given, as we talked about, they effectively have one wide receiver at the moment.
Yeah, obviously, and a guy like Sam Darnold, they have a professional quarterback, bad offensive line, so maybe some, slot targets, try to, could be kind of a PPR cheat code. I think wherever he lands is somebody that's going to want him. The only question to me, Connor, is can he, we heard Matthew Stafford say, hey, when healthy, he's still balling. But this is a guy who had under 6 fantasy points in 4 of his final games to end last year. He turns 32 in June. He suffered a couple of major injuries over the last couple of years. Yeah. And, when you see what the Rams just paid Davante Adams, it's not like they don't have the money or that they didn't want another big-name wide receiver. Sort of feels like, do the Rams know something we don't that just Cooper Kupp has done?
Feels that way. They needed a better player. And they showed you that Davante Adams is the way better player. And I think with Kupp, when you see the Seattle news, I don't want him taking away JSN slot opportunities. Like that's a spot that I don't want him to go to. I just think it hurts everybody. It doesn't do anybody any good. Yeah, it gives them a better upgrade at number 2 wide receiver. But, yeah, you're right, Matthew.
You don't want JSN playing outside.
You don't want JSN or Kupp playing outside that much. You want one of them to go where they can thrive in the slot. Obviously, the Texans are off the table because they went and got Christian Kirk. It feels like he probably wants to go somewhere where he has a shot to win, but the team that probably needs him the most is New England, right? New England just doesn't have a reliable veteran pass catcher for a young quarterback that, yes, there's volatility on the health scale, but that would be the place where I think he has the highest ceiling.
I have not heard this at all, but I could actually see the Commanders making sense just because but in all seriousness, we don't have a slot guy. We tried Luke McCaffrey there last year, we didn't, and when you think about like the Zach Ertz or the Bobby Wagners of the world, Dan Quinn and his staff have taken a liking to proven veterans, so I could see them saying, Cooper, you want to come here for 1 year and play with Jaden Daniels?
Right, in a quick passing offense?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm
just got to be a spot where you fit in, where you have the 2 outside guys.
They'll do a lot of different things with Debo.
Okay. One place, one guy who is not going to be an interest for the Commanders is Aaron Rodgers.
Correct.
We hope. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, let's add him. Let's add him to the mix. Compete with Marcus Mariota for the backup spot. But apparently Aaron Rodgers, his lack of a free agent decision is not about the money. It's about Rodgers taking his good old time, making a decision from Jerry Dulac. What do you think happens here, Connor?
Oh, I'm happy to not be associated with it anymore. I'll tell you that much. Ultimately, I think he goes to the Steelers because his body is breaking down. Like, we could all definitively say that. If you're going to put your body through that, don't you want to put yourself in the place where you have the best chance to win? Unless the Vikings as well, how they view McCarthy. That's the variable.
Right. That's the rumor is that's out there.
It's weird, though, because him playing in O'Connell's offense, like he needs to listen to somebody for the first time in his life.
It might be good for him.
It would be good for him if he's willing to embrace that. What the
Right.
Vikings do is not what he's wanted to do the last 10 years.
And it is hilarious, the whole Brett Favre, Green Bay to the Jets to the
Yeah.
Vikings.
Oh,
and
it's
now
amazing.
you've got, Rodgers, Green
Yes,
Bay
the
to the
cycle's
Jets. To
complete.
the, right, exactly.
I was just ruling out, and maybe he does go to the Giants. I don't see why he would go to the Giants.
No way.
It'd just be money. The other thing of why it would be smart for him to go to the Steelers is he doesn't have to carry the offense. They're going to want to run the ball and play good defense.
Yes.
Literally, you just need to be better than Russell Wilson.
Be a game manager.
You just be a game manager, exactly.
Be a game manager and throw go balls, which he did do in
Right.
New York.
He started to.
Yeah.
But when he was hurt, he didn't want to hang in the pocket and throw down the field. So
Yep. All right,
it's a weird one.
Last one for us, Lawrence. A guy who does throw go balls is Russell Wilson, and Cleveland's Mary Kay Cabot reporting that Russ will meet with the Giants on Friday following his meeting with the Browns on Thursday. Do you think that? Do you have a preference of where Russell Wilson goes?
I don't care where Russell Wilson go. Under 220
family?
passing yards, 7 of his last 11 starts. I kind of feel the same way with the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers did not do with Russell Wilson.
Right.
Not something you overly have to worry about as an opponent. And now he's in a position where he's waiting for Aaron Rodgers to see what he does. So, he'll be a starter one of these places. That's about it.
I think I'm rooting for the Giants just because.
For Russell.
Because that'll be good for Malik Neighbors.
Yeah. They need someone.
He needs somebody. And Russell Wilson will be able to get the ball consistently to Malik Neighbors. Again, Russell Wilson is a professional quarterback and not scared to throw it deep.
Indeed. All right, we're going to hit our last
He's not Cutlets.
He's not Tommy Cutlets.
Not Tommy Cutlets.
Never that.
Neither are we. We're going to hit our last break. When we come back, our best props for some of the bigger names on the move in free agency. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 sportsbook for live betting, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Just download the app and use the promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
Oh, the crowd is yours!
All right, Davante Adams and DK Metcalf props. Davante set at 1,000.5 receiving yards, DK 875.5, Davante 8.5 receiving touchdowns, DK 7.5. Now these numbers, they always look low because your brain doesn't bake in the injury risk and players get hurt all the time. And saying that, I'm still going to take an over. I'm going to take Davante Adams over 8.5 receiving touchdowns. He had 8 last year despite missing 3 games, and he's in a better offense, so I think he'll get 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, 5 straight seasons with at least 1,000 receiving yards for Davante Adams. Now he goes to a very narrow target tree and a quarterback and coach that want to use him. Give me the over on 1,500 receiving yards for Davante Adams next year.
Give me the over on that, too. He did that last year in 14 games.
I'll take the over on DK's receiving yards at 875 because I think George Pickens might be traded from this team.
Yeah.
And then Roman Wilson? Who are we talking about here? They paid DK Metcalf $30 million to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver, not an 800-yard wide receiver.
Yep. And by the way, during the break, Mason Rudolph signs with the Steelers.
Look out.
So
Look out.
As it's starting quarterback, at least as we tape here. We'll see if Rodgers or Wilson or somebody else
How much time we
goes
got
into
left?
that quarterback.
Happy 7th and a half birthday to my youngest daughter, Amani. I love you.
There we go. Happy birthday, Amani.
And thank you to Stephanie Taylor, who was our wardrobe helper.
Steph, we miss you.
Wardrobe, we miss her. No longer with NBC Sports. Wish her well going forward. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Lawrence, Connor, and Jay, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.